That's the prop I just finished building. If you're interested in seeing how it's made, stick around. Now remember, this is a two-part video. If you haven't seen part one, I'll leave a link below. Make sure you watch it. My fancy workshop. So I finished making the register keys and I went ahead and painted them, and now it's time to create the register assembly. This is how I'm going to do it. Now if you recall, I made two of these slats of wood here that will fit inside of the cash register, and these are actually what's going to hold the keys. There'll be one on the top and one on the bottom, and there'll be 8 keys on top and 8 keys on the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these keys and I'm going to glue them into these slots. Now I'm going to skip every other one, so there'll be, when you're looking at the register, there'll be 1 key on top and 1 on the bottom, 1 on top, 1 on the bottom, 1 on top, 1 on the bottom. And you'll see what I mean once I get it all together and stick it inside the register. But what I'm going to do is, I think I'm going to take and put these in here and just use a little bit of hot glue just to hold them in place while this wood glue actually dries and holds them tightly, securely. Now I've got this on here just as a temporary guide, so that when I glue these on here, it'll stop right about, there you go, like that, and I'll know exactly where to put it at. Well, I did put those keys on upside down, but it'll work. I originally wanted to put them on the other way so this piece of wood would fit in there a little bit different, but it'll still work, no problem. You won't see that anyways because there'll be a piece of wood that covers all this. So the next step is to go ahead and glue these keys on to this board, and then we will fasten both these keys inside the register. Before I get too far along in the video here, if you're new to the channel, welcome. My name's Todd. As the description said in the video title, this is part 2 of the cash register build. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, make sure you watch that. I'll leave a link in the description there. Now, this cash register that I'm making here, I plan on using it this year as part of the decorations for the studio here. And the theme this year for out here in the studio is that of an undertaker, casket maker, furniture maker, and this will be the register that I use to collect money from the buyers of said things. Now, let me go ahead and finish putting the keys onto this here, finish the key assembly, and then we'll move on to the next step. So don't go anywhere. Hopefully we'll finish this cash register up in this video. So I went ahead and I attached the register key assembly to the register, and all I did was use some wood glue and my nailer. And I also went ahead and painted this wood here that the keys are attached to, because you will be able to see a little bit of this through the slits. And I had to do some fine-tune adjusting, and I'll show you here in a second what I mean by that. But these are fastened and ready to go. Now, let me just kind of start at the bottom here, and we'll work our way up till we get to this point here, and I'll show you how all this goes together. So at the base here, I have another little piece of plywood that I cut. And this is the same thin plywood that I use to make, well, the same plywood that I use for the bottom of this cash till, and then the same plywood that I'm going to use to cover the front of the cash register. So what I'll do is I'll take and put a little bit of glue on this, and then my nail gun, and I'll just glue this to the front. And this will hide this part here and make it look nice. And I'll probably put like a little handle here also when it's all said and done. So that'll go like that. Now on top here, I've got another piece of plywood that I cut, and this is the same plywood that I use for the sides. And this will set on top like so. Just a little ledge here. Now on top of here, I have this piece of trim. Now this I came across by accident, but it'll work out great. And it's actually a piece of old paneling that I use for the side walls inside here of the studio. And it's just a piece of tongue and groove paneling. And what I did was, on the groove part, I took and cut the back side off so that it's open. Here you can kind of see. And what this will allow me to do is this, when I put it the other way, I'll be able to stick this piece of paneling behind that slot there, and it'll keep it from moving around. So this piece here will go on there like so. Now for the tricky part. And yes, I went ahead and painted this brown. I thought about staining, but I'm going to use spray paint instead because I've got different types of wood here, and I just figured this would kind of make it all look the same color. Plus it dries a lot quicker. So this is how this is going to work. Now, in part one of this video here, I showed you how I cut that. But basically, I went through and used my compound miter saw and made these slits. And they had to line up with these keys, so that was kind of tricky. So this here will slide over the keys. Like so. Now, if you're going to try this, I would suggest that you leave this piece a little long on each side, because what might happen is you might have to go back and cut these grooves here one way or the other, and you might have to shift this. That way you'll still have room on the edges here to cover everything. You can always go back and trim these edges off later. Because if you see here, I have a little bit of a small gap there, but I've got a plan for that. And so what goes on next is another little piece of trim. And this is just a piece of trim that I had laying around, which most of this wood was. And it has like a little bullnose rounded here. So this I will put on here. And I'll leave this sticking up above this, probably about a 1/2 inch. And what that'll do, it will allow me to slide this piece on top here that's going to curve behind there, and I'll hold it in place. So under this piece, I've got another piece of trim, and this is just part of that tongue and groove paneling, the tongue part. I'm going to glue that on under here like so. And what it does is I have it, and it just kind of gives it a little more dimension, kind of makes it look nice. Plus it kind of helps fill this space up here, because what I'm going to do, if I can find it, this metal piece here, I'm going to take this metal piece, which is just aluminum, and I'm going to cut 2 pieces out of here. And these pieces are going to fit on the corners like so. And what this will do is this will hold this entire front securely to the register itself. That way, if I ever have to take this piece off to replace one of these keys, I can just unscrew these pieces of metal here on the corner and pop this off. Because over time, I imagine these things might get broken. And I probably also will use the same paint I use for the keys here, the gold color, on this. So that's the plan. So let me do that now, and then I'll come back and we'll talk about what we're going to do up here to kind of finish this out. Plus we still have the back of it to do. So don't go anywhere. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Hopefully you're liking this video. If you do, give it a thumbs up. If you decide you want to try something like this, there's no hard set rules on how to make it. I basically went online and looked at some pictures of old cash registers and came up with a concept that I wanted to try. And I don't have a fancy workshop. In fact, I use my tools set out there in the yard. And I basically have a table saw, a cut-off saw, like a miter saw, some hand tools. I do have a nail gun, and that's it. So nothing fancy. And as far as the materials, well, I'm just kind of using what I have and kind of putting things together like a puzzle with no instructions. So anything's possible. Keep that in mind. Well, I've been hard at work. I've got a few things to show you. I put this on the front of the till. Got this little shelf here on, trim. And then I also put some blocking up here. And this blocking will be used to support the piece of wood that kind of rolls on the top here. And I'll show you how that works. Now, on the faceplate, I went ahead and I glued this trim on here. That's the back. Now you see that space right there. When I put this on here, piece of wood that rolls here, that goes here, that will roll down, will tuck in behind this piece of wood here. Now, this is the piece of wood that I'm going to put here to cover the front. And this is kind of tricky because it needs to bend. So, how you do that is you make a bunch of scores on the back. And I used my circular saw to do this and just made a bunch of scores back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's not pretty, and there's a couple of spots where I actually went through the wood here, so I had some scrap, real thin pieces of wood that I kind of shoved in there, put some glue, and then I'll sand those down. And then I'll put a little wood filler on that. And then once I paint it, you shouldn't see it. But this can be kind of tricky. Now, when you make these scores here, you have to go against the grain. If you cut it with the grain, this will not bend. What will happen is this will just kind of snap in half. So it's important that you go against the grain. So the grain's gone this way, and I'm cutting this way. And that'll allow it to bend. So what I'll do is I'll take this and I'll tack and nail it down and just bend it over gently all the way down. Now I still got to trim the bottom of this, that way it'll tuck inside the face plate here. But I wanted to show you that. So once this dries, I'll get it all sanded down, and then we'll put the front together, and then we'll move on to the top here. Well, 1 week later, I haven't been working on it every day. I just work on the weekends, and this is the third weekend. Hopefully I'll finish it up today. But I have made some progress, and let me show you what I've got going on here. I just got back from the antique store, actually. I went and picked up a few pieces of hardware for the register. Picked up this little knob, which I'm going to use for the handle for the cash till. And then I also picked up this little brass plate, which I think came off like a dresser. But I'm going to mount this up here. I think it'll give it a nice look. Now, I also went ahead and cut these metal pieces here And the whole purpose of these are, besides being decorative, these pieces of metal here will hold this faceplate on. And then what I'll do is I'll drill a couple holes on each side, and this will screw into the sides of the register. If I ever need to get in there for whatever reason, like replacing these keys, I'll be able to take the front off there and fix them relatively easy. So as you can see, this will come off. And that'll just give me access to the inside here to do whatever. I did get this front piece on here cut and mounted. And then I also put a bunch of wood filler in some of the nail holes here, so I still have to sand that down. Up at the top here, let me show you what I did. This piece is removable. I'm going to glue this piece on here, but for now I'll take it off. So in here, I'm actually going to use this plexiglass, which I'll cut down to fit, and this will kind of give me the cover for it. Look like glass but not be glass. And how I'm going to do that is, I've got these strips of wood here that I cut down with my table saw, and on each one of these I put a groove in here. And this is just the width of the table saw blade. And what this will do, it'll allow me to slide this plexiglass into the groove there, like so. And so once I get this plexiglass cut, I'll take the top off, slide the plexiglass in, and then I'll glue and nail this final piece on here. And then this piece here, the top, will go on like such. Now, for inside here, I think I'm going to take a piece of this real thin plywood, and I'll probably like cut it and make like a nice little scallop on it. And then I will mount this inside here and like paint it maybe white, and then I might put on it like no sale. I think that will look pretty cool. So that's what I've got going on. I think what I'll do is I will go ahead and put it all together and paint it up, and then I will show you what it looks like, and then we can talk more about it. Well, what do you think? I think it turned out really nice, and I'm pretty happy with it. And I think it's time to wrap this video up. Like most things I make, after I've had it for a while, I'll go back and I'll look at it and I'll go, I think it might be kind of cool to add this or add that. So I may add a few things to it here and there down the road. Like, I still don't have like the little numbers on the keys, so I may add that. And I thought about maybe adding some dividers to the cash till. So that might be something I might want to do. And then, of course, on the back, here, I may put like a little sign that says like National Register Co. And depending on how you use this prop, you know, the back might be just as important as the front. And in my case, where I'm going to have it, it's going to be setting like this. So I'm definitely going to want to put something on the back so that my paying customers will have something to look at. So it's a nice space that you could use to decorate. And then also, and I may have said this earlier in the video, but I might stick like a light, just like a battery operated light, inside here and let it shine up through the glass here, or the plexiglass, to kind of give it a glow. That might look kind of cool too. But I'm going to wrap this video up. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up. If you like these type of videos, consider subscribing to the channel. And until then, I'll talk to you later.